Good evening and welcome from Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. Tonight it's been announced that Newcastle, Australia is to become a sister city with Newcastle upon Tyne. The official signing ceremony will take place in England on the 13th of July.
That's how the people of Newcastle and the Hunter Valley first heard the news of plans to twin the two cities in a sister city relationship. Newcastle, Australia has quite a lot in common with its English relative-to-be. Many of the city's suburbs have been named after familiar localities, like Hexham, Gateshead, Wallsend and Stockton. And many people from the north of England, like Jim Sutton, have chosen Newcastle, Australia as their new home down under.
Well, the weather obviously has got its advantages living here, and we like the area. We came here 8 years ago now, and I'm very, very happy in the Newcastle area. And I would say that the reasons for it were the depression that was going on at the time when I left England, and we came out here for a more happier life, and we've been successful there.
Newcastle is on the east coast of Australia, about 100 miles north of Sydney. It was first settled in 1804 as a penal colony. Convicts mined coal, cut cedar and extracted lime from the coastal foreshores. In 1885 it was officially declared a city. Many of the older buildings have been preserved and restored, such as Customs House, built in 1876, or Newcastle East Public School, opened in 1879, and the majestic Anglican Cathedral, which towers over the city. The city owes much of its economic development to coal. In the year to March 1987, 28 million tonnes of coal were exported, and more than 15 million tonnes were consumed by the domestic market. The port's coal loading facilities are among the most efficient in the world, as they feed mountains of the black mineral awaiting ships, many bound for Japan and Korea. The shipbuilding industry has had mixed fortunes here. The State dockyard was closed this year, suffering a similar fate to some British shipyards. It became a victim of the world slump in shipbuilding, relying heavily on repair work for its existence. After running up massive losses, the government closed it in February. However, a private shipbuilder, Carrington Slipways, has managed to survive, building a variety of craft from Sydney Harbour ferries to bulk carriers and the Australian Navy's fiberglass minehunter. It was the combination of coal and a deep harbour which attracted BHP to Newcastle in the early 1900s, when it built the massive steelworks. BHP employs more than 6,000 workers in the city, but there has been a shift away from economic reliance on heavy industry. In recent years, the city's tourist potential has been realised. Newcastle has been dubbed the city of beaches, and rightly so. Within just a few minutes' walk from the city centre, both surfers and swimmers can enjoy the clean sand and the warm water. In fact, once a year, Newcastle becomes a mecca for professional surfers when it hosts one of the world's richest surfing tournaments. Surffest attracts not only the best surfers, but also tens of thousands of fans who line the coastline for this glamour event. It comes as no surprise then that Newcastle is the home of 4 times world surfing champion Mark Richards. Soccer fans will know that Liverpool star Craig Johnston was born and bred in Newcastle, Australia, and returns regularly to visit his parents.
I'm doing the right thing.
Sailors find Lake Macquarie the perfect venue for their sport. It lies just south of the city, a huge inland lake with more than 100 miles of foreshore. Sailing champions in all classes have been bred here for world export. Netball is hugely popular with young sportswomen. The city provides many national teams with key players. And you'll find nearly every football code played here, from league to rugby to soccer and our very own Australian rules. The cultural side of the city is also alive and well. It's the home for the Hunter Orchestra, always immensely popular when it performs in public. city also boasts a fine collection of art treasures at the Region Art Gallery. William Doe Bell worked and lived near Newcastle. His famous painting, The Strapper, hangs in the gallery. But Newcastle is a working man's town. In the past, it's relied heavily on manufacturing and heavy industry, but has felt the effects of Australia's economic restructuring. Our government has deregulated many industries, removing protective tariffs. This has meant they now face open competition from imports. Some industries have been successful, others have gone under. Newcastle provided a barometer measure of what's happening elsewhere in the nation. It's also developed in the shadow of Sydney, being regarded sometimes as the country cousin. But Novocastrians like their city. The pace is not as furious, the air is cleaner, and parking spaces are easier to find. They'll argue that they enjoy one of the best lifestyles in Australia.
The woman's body was discovered on Wednesday morning by a Maritime Services Board employee on his way to work. She was floating face down, fully clothed in a stormwater drain. Police believe the woman was last seen at the Bellevue Hotel in Hunter Street at around midnight on Tuesday. The open drain runs behind the hotel car park. Police searched the water and surrounding areas, but have come up with nothing that suggests suspicious circumstances. They say the woman arrived in Newcastle from Sydney just 3 weeks ago. A post-mortem is now being carried out to determine the exact cause of her death.
The road to state selection wasn't easy for Melissa. She had to compete against more than 50 other athletes in trials following the state championships in March. She now joins 10 other girls and 11 boys in the New South Wales squad. In the high jump, Melissa is now clearing the bar at 1.52 metres and hopes to achieve a personal best of 1.6 metres. The Interstate Teams Championships begin in Darwin on July the 5th, and Macquarie Shores Little Athletics Club will be well represented by a champion young athlete.
Oh, well, Little Athletics-wise, it's the biggest event of the year, and to be selected in a New South Wales team for the Interstate Teams Championships is a great privilege and a really big effort.
Why do you prefer the high jump?
Because it's always been my favourite event.
Have you had to do any extra training?
Yes, other than the 2 training days that we've had with the team.
Meantime, at Belmont today, the final of the New South Wales Primary School Sports Association Rugby League Championships was played. After 3 days of strong competition between teams representing 10 regions in the state, the final was fought out between Metropolitan West in the black and gold and Metropolitan East. Metropolitan West took out the match 19-17. From the tournament, a New South Wales 12 years representative side was chosen to play Queensland, the ACT and the Northern Territory. Jason Marshall from Singleton was the only player from the Hunter to be selected in the state side.
The play is directed by Peter Bloomfield, who was also in charge of the 1970 production.
Well, it's a drama about the effect of apartheid in South Africa on the life of one young schoolgirl.
Is it relevant to today in South Africa?
Well, we've made some inquiries into this, and we've set the play purposely in the 60s when it was relevant. I understand that in present time, the Pamelas and Miss Calverts of this world mightn't face the same problems that they faced as depicted in this play.
What's the play got that's going to attract Newcastle people to come and see it?
Well, it's a very, very fine drama, and it's mainly a female cast. It's very involving, very compelling. I'm quite sure that anyone who sees it can't fail to get involved with it. It's a readily identifiable situation and it's quite well written.
Tonight is the opening night of Shadow in the Sun, which runs till July 18th.
You don't sound very certain. Did you wake up?
During the launching of the new open space study in Newcastle today, Mr Uren took the opportunity to talk about the old bugbear, local government's exclusion from the Constitution. Mr Uren says he's confident that the Constitution will be changed and that the upshot may be a phasing out of state government and a resurgence of power within councils.
We're finding in government, a public dollar has to be spent, it has to be spent fairly wisely, and we're finding that we spent more effectively and more efficiently and more economically and more democratically at the grassroots level, that means local government.
The retiring minister, who after this election will confine himself to the back bench, also shot a warning at councils, saying that if the Liberals won office, local government would be $504 million poorer.
That when Mr Howard was talking about cuts to the states, he was also talking about cuts to local government. We talked about cuts to federal departments. He was also talking about cuts to local government.
The federally funded Newcastle and Lake Macquarie Open Space Study is the first comprehensive study of its type in Australia. It says that council's money could be better spent on parks, and it says more people take part in informal recreation, and they're more likely to frequent areas like Blackbutt or the Shortland wetlands, rather than the general use parks. It says Blackbutt should be upgraded, and an adventure park should be established in Newcastle. As for Lake Macquarie, more lakeside parks are needed. The study is a guideline to councils, and it's up to them to decide whether the recommendations are implemented.
What we're hoping is that this report will get a great deal of publicity in terms of public exhibition, and that following from comments from members of the public, both councils will adopt recommendations.
Mr Uren also handed over a cheque for $60,000 to be used on a social strategy plan to find out just what services are available to the people of Newcastle and Lake Macquarie.
Rachel McQuillan served up a crowd pleaser in the Newcastle Open Junior Tennis Finals at District Park. The young champion from Merewether easily defeated Nicole Brent of Marylands in straight sets. Rachel is ranked #1 in Australia in the under-16s. Yesterday she was awarded a $2,000 grant, the Des Curran Award, for the third consecutive year. On the international circuit, McQuillan has a hectic year ahead. In July, she'll compete in the Maureen Connolly Cup in New York. Then it's off to West Germany. And in August, her selection in the McDonald's squad will take her to the United States and Scandinavia. In the Boys Open Junior Finals, Coal Point's 15-year-old Richard Nichols upset the favourite, 15-year-old William O'Neill from Holmesville. O'Neill played more aggressively in the second set, but fell away in the third, missing vital points. In 3 hard-fought sets, Nichols emerged the stronger player, 6-4, 3-6, 6-3. Both boys will be favourites in the Open Schweppes annual district titles in August.
A large part of Newcastle tennis history harks back to a court in the backyard of number 8 4th Street, Adamstown, the home of Frank and Margaret Brent, second mum and dad of plenty of talented kids. Their first son Rodney made it to the Davis Cup squad in the Newcombe days, but Peter Doohan is the best ever of the locals.
He's the best player that ever come up out of here. Because I think on grass, he's very good. I was telling them all here all the week. I said, don't write Peter off. I said, oh, well, you've got a bad draw, he's playing Peter. I said, who the devil's Becker? And I studied him on tape, so I got him on tape here in another match that he was playing. And I worked it out. I thought, well, Peter, if you play the ball to his feet when he's coming in, behind his serve, and when he's on the baseline receiving, serve the ball, it'll swing into his body. And that's exactly what he did.
What have we got to look forward to now with Leif Shiraz? What do we know of him?
I've never seen him play, I don't know. And he's a very good player, but he's a specialist on hard court. So that should suit Peter.
He's beaten Lendl though, hasn't he?
Yes, and he was... Tape, so I got him on tape here in another match that he was playing. And I worked it out. I thought, well, Peter, if you play the ball to his feet when he's coming in, behind his serve, and when he's on the baseline receiving, serve the ball, it'll swing into his body. And that's exactly what he did.
He followed that advice to the letter too, didn't he?
Right through, yeah, he did.
And you weren't a bit surprised?
No, I wasn't surprised.
What have we got to look forward to now with Leif Shiraz? What do we know of him?
I've never seen him play, I don't know. And he's a very good player, but he's a specialist on hard court. So that should suit Peter.
He's beaten Lendl though, hasn't
he? Yes, and he was runner-up to McEnroe.
So, well, they can all play tennis. If they're at Wimbledon, they can play tennis.
He has dropped away a little bit in ranking. He's around 150 or 60 odd, and he dropped away. He was 60-something.
While most areas of council are watching costs, the dog catching division of the health department has doubled in size, going from 1 vehicle to 2 and from 2 dog catching officers to 4. The dog catcher's life is not an enviable one. They are some of the most maligned members of the council staff. But Alderman Frank Rugby says their work is invaluable, and following a growing number of complaints about dog problems, the council has decided to act.
There's been a big outcry from the people that they want the dogs controlled in Newcastle.
At the moment, owners face a $10 retrieval fee from the RSPCA, but Alderman Rugby says that isn't a strong enough deterrent for irresponsible dog owners.
The release fee isn't hefty enough. I'd like to see the release fee risen, and it will be in the next local government conference. We'll be making an application to have it higher.
Years ago, Kevin Curran opened his electronics manufacturing firm here in Awabba Street at Morisset. Then it was a one-man operation. Now he's employing 7 people, manufacturing electronic equipment such as modems and computers for the Sydney market. To keep competitive, Mr. Curran wants to build a factory on this 1.6 hectare site, a factory which should employ up to 50 people in a manufacturing operation which is both quiet and clean. The only problem is, the land is zoned rural, not industrial.
I'd still have the plans where I'd like to put a large factory up here and get into research and development and maybe bid on government contracts is what I'd ideally like to do.
It was Kevin Curran's innovative approach to competing in the lucrative electronics market was recognised last year. Curran's Electronics won the Hunter Region Small Business Award. The Hunter Development Board has now taken an interest in Mr. Curran's problem, and it was brought to the board's attention at this year's launch of the Small Business Awards, the same award Kevin Curran won in 1986.
The Hunter Development Board is greatly supportive of small business, and we see these state awards as a way of recognising excellence in small business and as a way of encouraging people to use the small business services in the region.
Meantime, Mayor of Lake Macquarie City Council, Alderman Jeff Pasterfield, says Mr. Curran will be given a sympathetic hearing by Council
I'd have to have a look
try
at
and
again
resolve the
because
problem.
we're governed fairly much by sometimes the ordinances and sometimes by the community itself, particularly if it's in a location of where it's conflicting with some other particular zoning, and Council is limited in that regard. But nevertheless, we look at it in the time, at the time, and see whether or not there isn't something that we can do about it.
Sulphide Corporation is a large producer of lead and zinc, a process which must be carefully controlled because of the dangerous byproducts it creates. The company currently plans to significantly increase production, and for this reason has decided to spend $11 million better equipping the plant to control lead gases. The current level of lead in the air around the plant is 5 micrograms per cubic metre. The company says the new equipment will halve this figure. This still exceeds, however, the level recommended by the National Health and Medical Research Council of 1.5 micrograms per cubic metre. Plant General Manager Peter Lean says this figure is impractical.
We'll be aiming at that certainly, but in the very close areas of Bullaroo, we are doubtful if we'll ever get down to 1.5 to 1.5.
So do you think that it's irresponsible of the government to set levels like that then suggest that companies such as yourself aren't playing it safe?
They're certainly setting very low levels, but the government is also being very sensible in giving us plenty of time to plan our way through to get down as low as we can.
The company is now facing a second issue, potentially as damaging. Because of the dangers of lead intake to children, plants such as this are able to stop women who may become pregnant from working there. After the 1st of August, however, the government says this will no longer apply and companies must not discriminate between the sexes. According to Peter Lean, this could force the company's closure.
The company is seeking to be exempt from equal opportunity for women working on the plant because the level of lead in blood for a woman who can get pregnant on this plant is so low that we could never work with women on this plant.
These 4 dancers are part of the 47-strong troupe that is regarded as one of the most prestigious in the Soviet Union. The tour, which began mid-May, has already taken the dance company to most capital cities in Australia for the first time. The troupe gave its opening performance at the Civic Theatre last night, and warm-ups are continuing today for 2 more performances tonight and tomorrow night. The spectacle has been a sellout among Australian audiences, as tour manager Kim Sayel explains.
It's 2 hours of non-stop dancing, covering everything from traditional folk through to contemporary modern dance. It's got a bit of everything, from the can-can to gypsy to flamenco to break dancing, aerobics, you name it, it's in there.
And a colourful show, no doubt, with the traditional costumes.
Absolutely. I mean, they're travelling with 2 tons of costumes, and you can see why when you come and see the show.
Where's the troupe heading after Newcastle?
They go to New Zealand for 3 weeks, and then we've actually extended the tour by a week, and we're doing Melbourne, and then they go home.
One of the state candidates contesting seats in the Senate is Rob Wood. At a local nuclear disarmament meeting last night, he outlined policies and campaign tactics for the upcoming election. With only a state membership of a few hundred, Mr Wood believes it's the issues rather than party size that will catch the votes on July the 11th.
What we're doing is remaining with the single focus of nuclear disarmament, but showing that political oppression in the world, poverty in the world, and unemployment, inflation and high interest rates are direct consequences of nuclear war strategies.
The NDP is a relatively small party. How confident are you of clinching seats in the Senate?
We're fairly confident of clinching seats because in the New South Wales last time around we got 9.3% of the vote, and we only need 7.7% of the vote this time to clinch a seat.
The Nuclear Disarmament Party split in 1985. Has that wound been healed in time for this election?
That wound is being healed slowly, but in the wake of the Rainbow Warrior bombing, it's quite clear that the nuclear terrorists will stop at nothing to destroy either movements or sailing boats that are making a noise about nuclear disarmament. And we're fairly convinced, and we're fairly united on the notion that we were split from without, not from within.